What's up, movie lovers? I'm Mike, and this is Gotta Love Them Movies.
It stinks.
Oh, you guys, Da 5 Bloods is the newest film from director Spike Lee, and I had an opportunity to check it out on Netflix. It's on Netflix, so it's streaming everywhere. So if you want to go check it out, please most definitely go check it out. It's an interesting film. It's an interesting film, to say the least. Let me just go ahead and preface this by saying I didn't really care for it. I didn't really get in, like, man, especially after the passing of Chadwick Boseman. This was a film that I was really looking forward to seeing. This will be a spoiler review. Everything, I start like saying something and I have to kind of hold myself back a little bit, but this will be a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen Da 5 Bloods, or if you don't care about spoiler, is that one and the same thing? If you haven't seen Da 5 Bloods, but you don't care about spoilers, there you go. There's the delineation. Go ahead and keep watching, but if you do care about spoilers, if you haven't seen Da 5 Bloods and you don't want it ruined or spoiled for you, go ahead and push pause. Come back and watch the review after you've seen the movie. So you have been warned. Spoilers ahead. Chadwick Boseman is not in the film very much. In fact, this was actually kind of a huge selling point for this film, is that, hey, even before the passing of Chadwick Boseman, I was really looking forward to seeing the film. I was looking forward to seeing what he was going to bring in it. And I was really confused by the trailers because they really focus on his character a lot in the trailer, on Chadwick Boseman's character. But it's only in, like, very specific kind of war scenes. For those of you who have seen Da 5 Bloods, you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Da 5 Bloods is a Vietnam War kind of remembrance film, right? So there's there's this there's a group of men who have kind of come back together. Their friend, Chadwick Boseman, who is their kind of platoon leader back in Vietnam, way back when, he died in Vietnam. So they kind of get back together to go to Vietnam and collect his remains and bring him home. The secret mission that they haven't told anybody about is that in the right around the same time that Chadwick Boseman's character died back in Vietnam, they found a whole big box full of gold bars that was supposed to go to the Vietnam government to kind of like aid, like from the U.S. government to Vietnam to aid in the war effort. It never got fully delivered, and so these guys found the gold, they buried the gold and said, hey, we're going to come back someday and dig up the gold and whatever. Really interesting premise, really cool premise. First of all, this film is confusing. The storytelling of the film is very confusing. I didn't understand why we didn't focus on any one central character. There's 4 main characters and one kind of side character, I guess. And that's all happening in like contemporary times. I didn't enjoy that aspect of storytelling because as a viewer, I had no entry point into the story. Am I supposed to side with this guy? Am I supposed to side with this guy? Whose story is it that we're telling? And if we're telling everyone's story all at once, why is priority being given to certain characters, but then it's not like a full priority, So like Delroy Lindo, his character, I guess you could argue he's the main character of the movie, right? I liked his character the best because they gave him the best character development. Very few characters in this movie have any sort of character development, and we don't really fully understand why it is that they're. We get it. We understand you're going back to Vietnam to dig up your friend, bring his remains home, and also get the gold that you had left there eons before. But where the movie starts as this, like, hey, all of us friends, we're all coming back. They spend too much time, and there are too many scenes of just them kind of hanging out, and there might be a little problem. Like there was one scene where they're all in a bar together in Vietnam, and one of the I don't even remember the characters' names. One of the guys, he gets like really wasted drunk, And I didn't really understand why that scene, like, why did we need that scene? What did we learn from that scene? Now there are other scenes in the movie, like when they're on a boat in the river, kind of like going down the river, I guess. And another boat comes up to them trying to sell stuff. One was a chicken. And Delroy Lindo was like, "Get this guy away from me! Just get him away from me! I can't handle this right now." I understand that his character has PTSD. Like, they all have PTSD. I get it. My father was a Vietnam vet. I get, like, the whole Vietnam PTSD thing. I get it. But they don't explain why it's important to this story. Why does Delroy Lindo have it more severely than other people? And again, like, towards the end of the story, I get it. You find out Delroy Lindo's character was the one responsible for killing his best friend and platoon leader of Chadwick Boseman, and it was an accident, but he can't tell anyone, and now they have this money, and so the movie easily could have been an hour shorter. 45 minutes easily. 45 minutes to an hour. It needed to be shorter. The edits of this film were weird. The transitions, like Spike Lee, he tried to do some really cool things in terms of subverting expectation in terms of storytelling. I get that, but it was confusing. It didn't make any sense to me. There were some points that Delroy Lindo's character was talking directly to the camera, and it was like he was talking to himself, and he was having like this weird psychotic break. Stuff like that I thought was really interesting, but we never got to see the other side of it. The impact of that moment was never fully realized, or not just moment, but moments. Stuff like that just kept happening throughout the film. There was this weird editing thing that was done on purpose. The first time I caught it, I pointed it out to my girlfriend. I'm like, "Oh, look, like two friends go in to hug, the camera angle changes, and then they go into hugging. It's like they're repeating that same moment, but like a fraction. So it's like, hey, going in for the hug, fully embrace. Camera angle changes, and then they go in for the hug and fully embrace again in the same moment. And to the naked eye, it just kind of seems like, oh, it was, they should have cut, the footage down by 1 second or like half a second, so that there isn't that overlap in terms of like time moment. But it kept happening throughout the film. The first time it happened, I was like, oh, that's a really bad editing mistake. Anybody should have been able to catch that and shorten it and, like make that mistake make sense. But then it kept happening throughout the film over and over and over again. I think it happened like I caught it 5 times. I don't know if it happened more than that or less than that, but I caught it at least 5 times. And that's when I started realizing this mistake was done on purpose. Again, narratively speaking, I don't quite understand why, because if it's supposed to be a representation of what's going on in Delroy Lindo's mind for his psychotic breaks and understanding that he's having a lot of problems dealing with not just the death of his friend, but the fact that he was the cause of his friend's death. Like these things just didn't make sense. They didn't connect. The movie was drawn out. It just kept going. Like I said, I wasn't a personal fan of the film, but I will say, to the film's credit, it had some really cool themes. First of all, the theme of friendship, the themes of redemption, the themes of trying to save someone, like Jonathan Majors, who was just cast as Kang the Conqueror, or at least we think Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. Jonathan Majors plays Delroy Lindo's son, who just shows up out of the blue for no reason. Apparently, hey, Dad, I was worried about you, so I came halfway around the world to Vietnam to make sure that you are going to be okay. It's a thin excuse. Like, why is he there? We'd never gotten to the meat and potatoes of any of these characters. None of the characters. And one of the other characters, come to find out that, he fathered a child back in Vietnam way back when. I guess there was kind of a conclusion to that story, but why do we need that? Why is that story important, right? Why is that being told? Why is that a part of this story? There were just, I don't know, a lot of loose ends, a lot of loose threads. So there was that scene where one of their friends got blown up after he stepped on a landmine. like you saw it coming from a mile away. He kept backing up, and you're like, there's a reason he's backing up. It didn't just happen. Like, you could smell the smoke in the air before the bomb went off. So stuff like that, it's confusing to me how Spike Lee went from literally being an Academy Award winner from BlacKkKlansman to this, which seems like a subpar film. It seems like he didn't have the budget, and he didn't fully realize the story. Now, like I said, the story has some really cool redeeming points. The messages buried therein, of course, like the race relations, that was probably the biggest theme of the movie is, the United States government not caring enough about the African American population to just send them off to Vietnam and have them be the lambs to the slaughter. Like, which was a completely horrible thing to do, but it was also true. So this is a story kind of telling that aspect and that side of the story buried within this other story. Also, when they get Chadwick Boseman's remains, and I guess they collected the remains. I mean, they dug up the body, but then you never, like, that's the last you see of it. That's kind of the last you hear of it too. Kind of. I think they make like one or two references later on, but the story of, collecting their friends' remains doesn't go anywhere. It now becomes the gold and the fallout of the friendship amongst, like, with the gold and everything. And, there was a lot of aspects about that I found really interesting. Like, allegiances change when you have large, copious amounts of money enter the fray. So there were some really cool themes and some really cool points to be made from this. But overall, as a film, it didn't really work for me. Anyway, so that's kind of like a brief, explanation back and forth. I kind of want to go into the acting a little bit. The acting wasn't incredibly believable to me. It was, I guess it was passable. It was okay, but a lot of the characters, Delroy Lindo is the exception. And I guess, Chadwick Boseman, because he was in the movie for all of 5 minutes collectively. He wasn't in the film very long at all. So Delroy Lindo had some really great moments, and there were some really great scenes, not just with him. There were some really great scenes to be had throughout the film. But I don't know. We're talking about acting. I'll go back to the writing in a second. But in terms of acting, I didn't fully believe that if this was the situation that they are laying out in front of me, that I didn't fully believe that their acting style would have been indicative of what was going on in that situation, in that scenario. Again, when their friend steps on a landmine, their reaction, especially what happened immediately right after, Jonathan Majors steps on a landmine. He didn't blow up. If you saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But then they saved Jonathan Majors, and then it was just kind of like, oh, our friend died. Okay, well, we're not going to have any. Why wasn't there an emotional reaction to that? Again, that's a writing and possibly directing issue, but in terms of the acting, it was fine. The acting was definitely elevated by Delroy Lindo's character. Everyone else was just kind of, they were there. I don't know. And for those reasons, I'm giving acting a 12 out of 20. All right, let's move on to directing. So, of course, this is a Spike Lee joint. So Spike Lee directed the film. Coming from BlacKkKlansman, winning the Academy Award for Best Director, to this film, Da 5 Bloods, everything just seemed disjointed. A lot of the inserts into the film, there was a lot of inserts with Hanoi Hannah, which, again, narratively could have been really cool. It tried to fill in the gaps of the information that we're missing. There was this weird, there was this, it wasn't alternate reality. It was a flashback, but the flashbacks had all of the older actors, I guess the modern day, the age of the actors in modern day, but they were back in Vietnam, but they were their same age, right? So they didn't do anything to compensate for this huge age gap. It was just, this Delroy Lindo, and I keep using his name over and over and over again because I literally don't know the names of anybody else in the cast except for Jonathan Majors. So with Delroy Lindo, he's 70, 75 years old. in the present day, but then in the flashback scenes, he's also like 70, 75 years old in all of the flashback scenes. And so are the other characters, with the exception of Chadwick Boseman, because, you know, he kind of got shot up and died in the Vietnam flashbacks. So it was an interesting creative choice, but again, there wasn't any explanation as to why that was happening the way that it was, or that he was remembering it that way. I mean, again, like maybe a little bit more symbolism. Tell me why this is going on. If this is all a part of like the construction of Delroy Lindo's character's mind, that would have been an interesting portrayal, but it fell flat for me. The pacing was off. Like I said, the inserts just didn't really make sense. It was long. It was such a long movie. The acting choices from the actors also plays into the direction. Cinematography I thought was fine. That part was okay. It tried to feel like an Apocalypse Now swan song. This I feel like this was Spike Lee's version of Apocalypse Now, trying to put his own spin on it, tell his own version, not his own version, his own story within this world. There was the musical choices were all over the place. There was in tone, the tone kept changing, and a lot of that was the music. I don't know. It didn't really work for me. So I don't know. All of that is to say, it wasn't a complete abomination, but I'm giving directing an 8 out of 20. Spike Lee knocked it out of the park previously with his last film. Like BlacKkKlansman was incredible. That was a great movie. Da 5 Bloods, I wanted it to be great. It just didn't land for me. Writing. The writing of the film was a little incoherent. Dialogue, I guess, was fine, but there was no character development. We didn't understand anyone's personal reasons for going on this journey. They were surface at best. The dude who stepped on a landmine and got blown up. Also, that special effect was really bad. It was comedically bad. It was really bad. They did not do that imagery justice at all. It looked unforgivably bad, especially for Academy Award director. Anyway, so the dude who stepped on a landmine, moments before he stepped on a landmine, or I guess like a scene before or something like that, after they had the gold and he also the way they find the gold. Jonathan Majors goes down, to take a poo in the middle of they're lost. They're lost in the jungles of Vietnam. Jonathan Majors just happens to go down the hill to take a poo, and as he's digging the hole for his poo hole, that sounds gross. He literally strikes gold. And okay, I understand why it was a huge Deus Ex Machina. I'm forgiving of Deus Ex Machinas that move the story forward. Just, it was going to happen anyway. They would have found another way to find the gold. But the way the story played out, it was really cheesy. They needed to find the gold really quickly. So, like, in terms of the writing, why couldn't they fix that? Why do you have to be lost in the jungles of Vietnam? Why can't you just immediately know exactly the positioning of the gold and go straight to it? Why does it need to be this big, I don't know where it is, clink, hey guys, I think I found it. It was corny. It was really corny. And this is what I mean. Like, the tone kept changing because there were some really great scenes between certain characters. There were. I mean, it was a long movie. There was a lot of stuff that was disjointed, didn't match up. But amongst that, there were some really good scenes that talked about their friendship, talks about the dynamic. Like, there was that one guy who had a gun with him. That whole exchange, I think the same guy earlier in the film, he has his Oxycontin, because he has a hip problem. So you think that it's like, oh, okay, like there were some really interesting scenes, but again, like with the Oxycontin thing, that went nowhere. Why was that in the movie? Why was that in the movie? Because it didn't set anything up. It was just a moment. He had the Oxycontin. He's like, what, you think I'm a drug dealer? Okay. And then he empties the bottle and Oxycontin all over the ground. End of story. And does that mean like they're distrusting each other a little bit? And if so, why can't we have a scene where distrust matters? Make it a moment, not just this passing. I don't know. The writing, like I said, it was long, it was extensive, it didn't make any sense to me. But again, with the themes, the way that some of the themes that they incorporated into the film, the themes of, I keep saying friendship, but especially the race relations between the United States and Vietnam, I found particularly interesting. The fact that Delroy Lindo's character was a Trump supporter and everybody else is like, you are crazy. What is wrong with you? And Delroy Lindo was like, look, if you've seen what I've seen, if you've done what I've done, you would understand why I vote the way I vote. I thought that was interesting. That was really interesting to me. Why couldn't we have seen more of that? Let's understand this character. But we never had those opportunities to understand certain things. They brought up a lot of philosophical questions that never really got answered. So on some levels, it was really cool. In other levels, it was like, why can't we fully flesh out this idea? And all those reasons, that's why I'm giving writing. I'm split right down the middle. It's a 10 out of 20 for writing. All right, so the takeaway of this movie is by far the strongest part of this film. Again, race relations between the United States and Vietnam, race relations between the United States and African Americans. Why were they being sent to Vietnam? The way that they were being sent to Vietnam was really messed up. And so they did a really good job at addressing that. I thought that was to me probably the most interesting aspect. Issues of PTSD, which again weren't fully realized, they weren't really fully explained, but I thought that those were really strong entities of the film, really kind of more interesting aspects that we, could have gone into deeper depth over. Other takeaways of, like I said, friendship, how relationships fall apart, especially when you have large, copious amounts of money to deal with. What do you do when somebody, their friend stepped on a landmine and then the landmine sweeping crew just Deus Ex Machina, bad writing, the minesweeper crew just happens to happen upon them. Hey, we heard an explosion. We happen to be in the area. How do you happen to be in the area? Again, Deus Ex Machina. How do you happen to be in the area when it's the middle of the jungle of Vietnam? It's huge. It is absolutely huge. And you just happen to be wandering through the area where these guys are. It frustrated me. And I don't have a problem with allegiances changing per se, but anyway, that's all a writing issue. I've already hashed that out to death. But the takeaway of the film I thought was really strong. Mental health, super important. Race relations, super important. Equality for all, super important. The political aspect that they brought up was really interesting. Relationships between the father and the son, really interesting. They didn't delve into it as much as they should have, but it's all of the themes. This movie was all themes and very little payoff. But I contend that those themes, you walk away from this movie and you're still thinking about that stuff. You're thinking about how it impacts you, how it impacts others around you, and that I think was definitely the strength of this movie. And that's why this, for the overall takeaway, it's getting a high score of 19 out of 20. Really well done, really interesting concepts. Granted, they weren't fully realized. We didn't get hardly any resolution to any of these things, but it was a strong concept, or multiple strong concepts throughout the film. So 19 out of 20 on that. So what was the effectiveness? How effective was this movie? Did it actually accomplish the goals that it set out to accomplish? I contend no. I know, surprise, right? This movie, in my opinion, was not very effective. It didn't reach it reached the audiences that it wanted to reach, but it didn't have the impact that I think it was going for. Like with, let's go back to BlacKkKlansman. It had some really strong themes, and it had a strong story. It focused around one, kind of two guys. It told their story with a really well-developed tale, and like how all of this happened. Again, it's a true story. I don't think the Five Bloods was a true story. It may have been. I don't think it was. However, we didn't care about the characters right from the get-go. Because we don't know who they are. It's just, hey, it's a bunch of guys getting together in Vietnam. Hey, let's go get a buddy. It was like there was very little thesis statement to this film at the beginning. You didn't really know what you were getting into unless you watched the trailer. I knew about the gold. I didn't know about going to get their friend's remains. I knew about the gold, and I got all that from the trailer. I didn't really understand what the movie was about until maybe 20, 30 minutes in. I didn't know why I was watching this. You know? Bad writing, bad directing. I don't like that. So, had I not been intrigued by the trailer, I wouldn't have continued watching this film. Like, you get halfway into the movie and then they find the gold. Hooray, we found the gold. You hit pause on Netflix. You realize you're only halfway into the movie. You're only an hour plus into the movie. You still have an hour 30 to go. And you're like, wow, like, pacing was off. This did not, if it wasn't for the themes, the really, really strong themes of this film, I would have left early. I would not have continued on because I wanted to see what was going to be done. Come to find out, very little resolution. I feel like this film wanted to be an Apocalypse Now. It wanted to be Full Metal Jacket. It wanted to be I don't know, like another like take Full Metal Jacket, Black Klansman, and Apocalypse Now. Put them all into one movie. There you go. That's what the Five Bloods should have been, and it wasn't. I think that's what Spike Lee wanted it to be, but I just don't see this movie as having the big social, cultural impact that I think the story could have been. It's a good story. It's not a good movie. It's not even a well-told story. It's a good story, but it's not a well-told story. All of those reasons, that's why effectiveness is getting a 10 out of 20. It has some merit. It's just nowhere near as strong as it could be. All right, so let's take all the scores, let's add them up all together, and we get... All right, guys, so 59 out of 100. Not the strongest. No, I mean, not the weakest, but also not the strongest of scores here. It's kind of right down. It's just a little above right down the middle for me. But anyway, what did you guys think of The Five Bloods? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere in between? Is 59 too low? Am I being too harsh with this? Or am I right on the money? Let me know in the comment section below. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what this dinosaur would want you to do. Roar, roar, roar!